History remembers the colonies that changed the world. But this one, it changed a nation by destroying it. In the final years of the 1600s, Scotland gambled everything it had, its money, its pride, its future, on a patch of tropical land thousands of miles away. A place they believed would make them rich. A place they believed would put them on the world map. A place they believed would save their struggling nation. But on that narrow strip of the Americas, the jungle had other plans. The Darien Scheme wasn't just a failed colony. It became a disaster so catastrophic, so financially devastating, that it dragged an entire country to its knees. It wasn't just the death of a settlement, it was the death of Scotland's independence. This is the story of the colony that killed a nation. Before the ships ever touched New World waters, before the jungle claimed its first Scottish life, the seeds of disaster were already planted, right at home. Late 1600s, Scotland was a nation cornered, crops failing, trade routes strangled by bigger European powers, merchants bankrupt, families starving, hope bleeding out by the day. And then, a single, brilliant, irresistible idea took hold. A colony in Panama, a gateway between oceans, a trading empire on the narrowest crossroads of the world. It was more than a business plan. It was a lifeline, a chance to rescue the nation from economic collapse. Investors poured in everything they had. Farmers sold their land. Nobles handed over fortunes. Even widows gave their last coins to the dream of Caledonia. All of Scotland believed in it. All of Scotland bet on it. But this hope, this fierce, beautiful belief, was blind. Blind to the deadly jungles of Darien. Blind to Spanish warships waiting in the shadows. Blind to the storms, the fever, the starvation that waited across the sea. They didn't know it yet, but the nation's downfall had already begun long before the first ship sailed. On a grey July morning in 1698, the harbour filled with cheers, drums, prayers, and 5 ships carrying the last hope of a desperate nation. Over 1,000 men and women stepped aboard. Traders, soldiers, ministers, even children, all convinced they were sailing toward glory. They called it the greatest moment in Scottish history. But the sky above Leith told a different story, and in the shadows between the cheers, something else stirred. The air felt wrong. Cold wind where there shouldn't be wind. A shiver across the crowd that no one could explain, as if the sea itself was warning them. On the docks, families waved goodbye, never knowing they would never see those faces again. The ship set sail with songs of triumph. But by nightfall, those songs were drowned by the Atlantic. Storms rose out of nowhere. Supplies spoiled. Water ran low. Sickness began to whisper through the lower decks. But the captains pressed on. They had to. A nation had emptied its pockets for this dream, and there was no turning back. Hope was steering the ships, but fate was waiting in the dark waters ahead. The grand departure wasn't a beginning. It was the first step into a tragedy no one could escape. After months at sea, battered by storms and sickness, the Scots finally reached the Isthmus of Panama. To them, it looked like the beginning of a new era, a fresh world waiting to be claimed. They stepped onto the sand of a humid, suffocating coastline and proudly named it New Edinburgh, the capital of their future empire. The location had a grand name, but the land beneath their feet was a nightmare waiting to unfold. The jungle was not just dense, It was impenetrable. Vines as thick as rope, trees drowning out the sun, marshlands that seemed to swallow boots whole. Within days, the settlers realized the truth. This was no gateway to world commerce. It was a trap. The heat pressed down like a weight on the chest. Rain fell in violent sheets, turning camps into swamps. Mosquitoes hunted them in clouds. Food spoiled. Drinking water turned foul. And every night, fever crept through the tents like a silent assassin. They built a fort, Fort St. Andrew, but the jungle tore at it faster than they could repair it. Supply ships never arrived. The crops they planted refused to grow. The hunger grew sharper each day. From the moment the Scots raised their flag, Spanish eyes were watching. Patrolling ships circled the bay. Scouts moved through the trees. New Edinburgh was not just failing, it was surrounded. Disease, hunger, isolation, enemy pressure. The Scots had dreamed of building a thriving colony, but in New Edinburgh, they were simply trying to survive each sunrise. And as the jungle closed in around them, the settlers realized the cruel truth. Caledonia was not a new beginning. It was a slow, inevitable end. New Edinburgh was no longer a colony. It was a desperate battlefield against nature itself. The settlers were starving. The land had given them nothing. The supply ships Scotland promised never arrived. And the jungle offered only sickness, fever, and death. Each day, the list of the dead grew longer. Inside the fort, arguments erupted. Leaders blamed each other for the chaos. Messages were sent to Jamaica, begging for help. But the pleas faded into silence. Spanish forces tightened their noose around the bay, blocking supply routes, watching from the tree line. The Scots knew a siege was coming, and they no longer had the strength to fight. Then the rains came, and with them, the final blow. Torrential storms flooded the camp. Food stores rotted. Structures collapsed in the mud. Those still alive clung to the walls of the fort as if holding their own graves shut. Out of the 1,200 settlers who arrived full of dreams, barely a fraction were left alive. In July 1699, the survivors made the only choice left. They abandoned New Edinburgh. They stumbled to the shore, boarded the few ships that could still float, and fled into the open sea, leaving behind the graves of their families and the ruins of Scotland's greatest dream. By the time rescue ships arrived, New Edinburgh was silent, empty, a ghost colony swallowed by vines and fever. The dream of Caledonia was over, and its collapse was only the beginning of the disaster to come.